From the studios of Atlantic Television Network in Port Harcourt, this is ATN International News. First, the headlines. HIV vaccine trials halted over U.S. foreign aid freeze. Sudan RSF kills more than 200 in White Nile. 30 dies in Bolivia bus crash. Trump to nominate Martin as attorney for D.C. Myanmar detains 270 foreigners from scan compounds. Trump administration lays off 1,165 people. South African lab technician Nozifo Nloshwa was waiting for the test result for a potential HIV vaccine, which has eluded scientists for decades, when the order came in from USAID to stop work. The first round of vaccines she and her colleagues made in Johannesburg had produced an immune response in rabbits, which was promising but not conclusive, so they tweaked the formula and sent off 4 new versions for preclinical tests. A trial of an earlier separate vaccine candidate, which was about to be tested on humans in South Africa as well as Kenya and Uganda, is also on ice. Both trials are among the casualties of U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to dismantle the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. They are part of a wider South African-led HIV vaccine development scheme known as Brilliant and funded entirely by a $45 million grant from USAID. It is not clear if or when the project could resume. The U.S. State Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The project is one of many research efforts worldwide to be hit by Trump's action since taking office last month. Others include halting efforts to protect food crops from pests and diseases and blocking publication of a paper on the Mpox outbreak. Several other mRNA-based HIV vaccine candidates worldwide have reached clinical trials. Brilliant is unique in being Africa-led, aiming to develop capacity for producing vaccines in Africa. For the past year, the Johannesburg team had been working with genetic sequences from 2 South African patients who have HIV but whose bodies produce a rare type of antibody that neutralizes the virus. They are trying to simulate that immune response. We were gaining momentum, said Patrick Arbuthnot, director of the research unit, adding an HIV vaccine is the holy grail of the field. Trump in January ordered a 90-day pause in all foreign development assistance pending assessment of its consistency with his America First foreign policy. Separately, he has targeted South Africa with an executive order to cut all funding to the country, citing disapproval of its land reform policy and its genocide case against U.S. ally Israel. The U.S. foreign aid and leaving disaster response teams unable to deploy. Waivers for life-saving humanitarian assistance have been hampered. Residents of eastern Congo's second-largest city on Monday surveyed the aftermath of widespread looting that accompanied the arrival of Rwandan-backed M23 rebels who have pledged to restore order. The M23 fighters moved into the center of Bukavu on Sunday, marking the Tutsi-led group's most significant advance since seizing East Congo's biggest city in Goma in late January. The capture of Bukavu, a commercial hub, and of the strategic airport that services the city in the nearby town of Kavumu dealt a further blow to Kinshasa's authority and escalated a conflict that has fanned fears of an all-out regional war. Congo's government has so far stopped short of saying Bukavu was fully under M23 control. Congolese and allied Burundian troops withdrew from the city to avoid fighting in densely populated areas, creating a power vacuum that gave rise to looting and a prison break. In a statement read on local radio on Monday, a rebel alliance that includes M23 said it would assist the population of Bukavu who were abandoned by the army and allied combatants. Trade delegates said they did not expect any immediate outcome from the meeting, but that countries' reactions could indicate the likelihood of an escalation of trade wars in response to planned U.S. measures. Less than being a swipe at Washington, some delegates said they considered China's call for a debate more as an effort to show itself as compliant with World WTO rules, a posture that can help China win allies in ongoing global trade negotiations. Tensions between the two top economies at the WTO long predate Trump's arrival. Beijing has accused Washington of breaking rules, while Washington says Beijing does not deserve its developing country status, which entitles it to special treatment under WTO rules. As the Trump administration has announced plans to withdraw or disengage from other global organizations, the WTO has not yet been a major focus for the White House. However, incoming U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has called the WTO deeply flawed. Sudan's RSF have killed more than 200 people in attacks on villages around the town of Al Gitena in White Nile State over the past 3 days, an activist group said. The group, known as Emergency Lawyers and comprising legal experts, has been monitoring human rights violations, including attacks on civilians during the conflict in Sudan. Top UN officials sought $6 billion for Sudan this year from donors to help ease suffering in what they call an unprecedented crisis characterized by mass displacement and the world's worst hunger catastrophe ever. A United Nations statement said that famine conditions have been reported in at least 5 locations in Sudan, including displacement camps in Darfur, adding that this was set to worsen with continued fighting and the collapse of basic services. One of the famine-stricken camps was attacked by the RSF last week as the paramilitary group tries to tighten its grip on its Darfur stronghold. UN Emergency Relief Coordinator Tom Fletcher, speaking in Geneva, Mr. Fletcher explained that the United Nations 2025 humanitarian and refugee response plans for Sudan aim to assist nearly 26 million people inside the country and across the region who face a desperate situation. After nearly 2 years of conflict, a staggering 12 million people in Sudan and across borders have been displaced. The UN aid chief said that he welcomed the conversation just days ago with General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, leader of the Sudanese armed forces, about the importance of keeping Adre crossing open. But this is a fraction of what is needed, and each movement only happens after complex engagement and bureaucratic processes, he stressed. The logic continues to neglect the situation of ordinary Sudanese that are killed, displaced, and suffer all sorts of hardship. echoing Mr. Fletcher's observation that it might be difficult to understand why the UN and its partners were issuing such a large appeal for funding at a time of deep cuts to overseas aid by UN member states. The United Nations Refugee Agency chief explained that needs were immense, with 1 in 3 Sudanese uprooted by the violence. Social systems, health systems, education, kids haven't gone to school. Almost 13 million people are displaced, he said. The country is being destroyed at its foundations. Everything is collapsing, Mr. Grandi insisted, in an appeal to the international community to step up and help, not just to ensure that emergency aid and life-saving protection can continue without disruption, but also to end the violence and restore peace to Sudan. South Africa's rand weakened early on Tuesday against a buoyant dollar ahead of unemployment data due later in the day and a national budget speech on Wednesday. At 0739 GMT, the rand traded at 18.47 against the US dollar, about 0.5% weaker than its previous close. The dollar last traded about 0.2% firmer against the basket of currencies. Domestic investors will look to unemployment data for the final quarter of 2024 at 0930 GMT to gauge the labor market of Africa's most industrialized economy. Attention will quickly pivot to the national budget presentation by Finance Minister Enoch Gondongwana on Wednesday. Analysts anticipate the budget will focus on reforms, fiscal rules, and private sector inclusion. On the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the blue chip top 40 index last traded up about 0.1%. South Africa's benchmark 2030 government bond was little changed in early deals, with the yield up 1 basis point to 9.15%. Delta Airlines regional jet flipped upside down upon arrival at Canada's Toronto Pearson Airport on Monday, injuring 18 of the 80 people on board, officials said. Minnesota, and that all 76 passengers and 4 crew members were accounted for. The Delta flight crashed while landing at the airport at around 2:45 p.m. local time. The Federal Aviation Administration said in a preliminary statement. Todd Aitken, Toronto Pearson Airport's fire chief, said during a briefing on Monday night that 18 injured passengers were transported to local hospitals after the crash. Hours earlier, the airport's president and CEO, Deborah Flint, said there were 17 injured in the accident. We can now confirm that 18 injured passengers have been transported to the local area's hospital, Aitken said. We had 1 additional passenger recently transported to a hospital. The airport was shut down for more than 2 hours before departures and arrivals resumed. But the FAA warned that inbound flights were still being delayed significantly at their departure airports. The airport said earlier on Monday that it was dealing with frigid temperatures and high winds as airlines attempted to catch up with missed flights following a weekend's snowstorm that dumped over 8.6 inches of snow at the airport. While Aitken said it wasn't appropriate for him to comment on the ongoing investigation into the crash, he noted that the runway was dry and there was no crosswind conditions. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada, according to the FAA. The National Transportation Safety Board added that it will be leading a team of U.S. investigators to assist in the investigation. Bus crash in Bolivia on Monday killed at least 31 people and wounded over a dozen more. ATN reported citing local police. The driver of the bus likely lost control of the vehicle, causing it to drop nearly 800 meters off a precipice in the southwestern municipality of Yocala, according to the report. Of those injured in the crash are 10 adults and 4 children had been hospitalized, with several in intensive care, an official from the hospital said in the video. The Federal Aviation 45,000 Transportation Secretary Shane Duffy said on Monday, as questions rise around air traffic safety amid recent plane accidents. in a social media post message on X, formerly known as Twitter, responding to a post by his Democratic predecessor, Pete Buttigieg, who was the Trump administration's Department of Transportation. Less than 400 were let go, and they were all probationary, meaning they had been hired less than a year ago. 0 air traffic controllers and critical safety personnel were let go, Duffy wrote on Monday. The Trump administration sent air traffic controllers buyout offers, but later said they were not eligible, also declaring other safety officials, including TSA officers, ineligible. The FAA remains about 3,500 controllers short of targeted staffing levels. The Professional Aviation Safety Specialist Union said Saturday that the FAA had fired several hundred probationary FAA employees. The union said Monday it believed just under 300 FAA workers it represents were fired, including maintenance, aviation safety assistants, and movement and program assistants. These are positions are vital to the spokeswoman said. The FAA and Transportation Department have declined to say what jobs the fired workers held or why they were fired. The day was visiting the FAA's Air Traffic Control Command Center in Warrenton, Virginia, Duffy said. Senator Maria Cantwell, the top Democrat on the Senate Commerce Committee, on Monday slammed the Trump administration for firing FAA employees who inspect and maintain air traffic control communications, radio and computer systems, especially after a series of fatal crashes. Man charged with murder over the shooting of 2 Israeli visitors in Florida, the United States, believed the victims were Palestinians. Police charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and booked after the shooting. Victim identified in local media as a Jewish father and son visiting Miami from Israel survived. One of the men suffered an injury to his shoulder and the other was wounded in his forearm, according to local news reports. In an interview with WPLG Local 10, one of the victims, identified as Ari Rivai, said the shooter had opened fire at him and his father from a passing. Muslim and anti-Semitic hate have surged since the start of the war in Gaza on October, including several violent attacks. October 14, 2023, 6-year-old Palestinian Wadal Al-Fayoumi was killed after him 26 times in suburban Chicago. In another incident, a 41-year-old woman allegedly attempted to drown a 3-year-old Palestinian-American girl in Texas, while 3 young Palestinian men were injured after they were shot near a university campus in Vermont in November 2023. This is just the latest example of the hate targeting the Palestinian-American community in this country, and Palestinians have in their homeland. Nihad Awad, the National Executive Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, said in a statement on Monday. Policymakers in our nation should stop fomenting the anti-Palestinian hate that led to the genocide in Gaza and to hate crimes in America. President Donald Trump will nominate Washington Edward Martin for a full and permanent term as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Trump said on social media on Monday. In the role in an interim capacity, Martin asked the judge last month to drop charges against a man who took part in the January 6, 2021 assault on the U.S. Capitol, whom he also represented as a defense attorney. Trump granted clemency on his first day in office to nearly all of the 1,600 people charged with playing a role in the riot. Lawyers generally are prohibited from taking both sides in the same case, and U.S. Justice Department regulations require lawyers to step aside from cases involving their former clients for at least a year. Martin's nomination will need to be approved by the Senate. Martin, who has said he was present outside the Capitol during the siege, also represented two other people found guilty of taking part in the attempts to overturn Trump's 2020 election. He described as misconduct in investigating the attack. Spokesperson for Martin had told reporters earlier this month that he was in compliance with the requirements for his position. Trump supporters attacked the Capitol in an unsuccessful attempt to prevent Congress from certifying Trump's 2020 election defeat to Joe Biden after weeks of false claims by the Republican that he won the contest. Number of workers terminated by the Trump administration at the National Institutes of Health has been revised to 1,165, according to an NIH international email seen by reporters on Sunday, down from an initial 1,500. The email sent to senior NIH leaders on Saturday night said some names were removed from the list, but new ones may have been added. Affected staff will be placed on administrative leave starting on Monday. They have received termination letters and will be on administrative leave for 4 weeks before they are officially terminated, and NIH officials told reporters. The numbers account for around 6% of the 20,000 people employed by the NIH, an agency overseeing 27 institutes and centers and the top public funder of medical research on everything from vaccines for emerging pandemic threats to targets for new drugs. It has long been in the crosshairs of newly confirmed Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who said in November he would act quickly to fire 600 people there and replace them with all new hires. It was unclear if those terminated this week, most of whom were probationary workers, let go as part of President Donald Trump's overhaul of government agencies, included the 600 employees referenced by Kennedy, an avowed vaccine skeptic and critic of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Food and Drug Administration, and the NIH agencies now under his watch. The Trump administration also terminated employees at the FDA on Saturday night, reporters said, citing sources. It wasn't immediately clear how many FDA employees were affected nor how many parts of the agency may be involved, the report said, adding that some of those caught worked in the FDA's Center for Devices and Radiological Health. The FDA did not immediately respond to a request for comments outside regular business hours. About 5,200 probationary employees across the health departments of Health and Human Services were being let go. Reporters said amounting to 6% of its 80,000 employees, including those at the FDA, NIH, and the CDC, which saw half of its probationary workers terminated on Friday. The U.S. government began firing thousands of people at multiple agencies on Thursday as Trump and billionaire Elon Musk accelerate their purge of America's federal bureaucracy. Myanmar authorities detained 273 foreigners from scam compounds along the border with Thailand. A Chinese official visited frontier towns on both sides in a widening crackdown on illegal online operations. Hundreds of thousands of people trafficked by criminal gangs have been forced to work in scam compounds that have sprung up across Southeast Asia, including the border between Thailand and Myanmar, the United Nations says. Despite operating for years, the scam centers have only recently faced renewed scrutiny after the rescue and return to China of actor Wang Xing, abducted in Thailand after being lured there with the promise of a job. Officials from China, Myanmar, and Thailand met in Myawaddy this week, including China's Assistant Public Security Minister Liu Zhongyi. The state-run Global New Light of Myanmar said on Tuesday. The representatives held a coordination meeting in Myawaddy and discussed the preventive system for telecom fraud between the three countries, it said, referring to the Myanmar town in the vicinity of which Wang was rescued. Since the end of January, Myanmar authorities have found 1,303 foreigners who entered the country illegally and worked in scam compounds in the Myawaddy area, with 273 detained on Monday, the paper added. A group of 260 scam center survivors from Myawaddy entered Thailand last week, most of them victims of human trafficking, said Chu Chip Wongchai, governor of Tak province. Two of the group have handed to the police for further investigation, he added. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, we will continue with the rest of the stories. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. North Korea's foreign ministry said on Tuesday that it will keep bolstering its nuclear force, denouncing a recent joint pledge by the United States, South Korea and Japan for its denuclearization, according to state media KCNA. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yol, and Japanese Foreign Minister Iwaya Takeshi held talks on Saturday on the sidelines of a security conference in Munich and issued a statement reaffirming their commitment to North Korea's complete denuclearization. Pyongyang's foreign ministry criticized the country for pursuing an outdated, absurd plan, warning against seeking what it called foolish acts, inciting collective hostility and conflicts. As long as the U.S. and its vassal forces hostile threats exist, the DPRK's nukes are means for defending peace and sovereignty and a means for legitimate self-defense entrusted by the Constitution of the state, an unnamed ministry spokesperson said in a statement carried by KCNA, vowing to continue strengthening its nuclear force. The spokesperson was referring to North Korea's formal name, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. South Korea's foreign ministry urged the North to cease its illicit weapons programs and return to the path to denuclearization. North Korea will never be recognized as a nuclear weapons state, ministry spokesperson Lee Jae-wong told the briefing. We hope that they will realize that the development of nuclear weapons and missiles will only hinder their own security and economic development. The three-way meeting was their first since the inauguration of U.S. President Donald Trump, who held unprecedented summits with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during his first term and has touted their personal rapport. South Korean lawmakers, after being briefed by the National Intelligence Service, have said that Pyongyang's recent missile tests were in part intended to show off its U.S. deterrent assets and drawing Trump's attention. Also in Seoul, South Korea's military said on Tuesday it has deployed a domestically developed new bunker buster missile named the Korean Tactical Surface Missile KTSSM. The missile, nicknamed Ore, which means thunder in Korean, is capable of conducting simultaneous precision strikes in a short span of time against North Korea's long-range artillery systems that could threaten the greater Seoul area in the event of a contingency, the military said in a press release. Mexican tequila manufacturers are anxious about a potential 25% U.S. import tax that could harm businesses they've spent years building. Meli Barajas, owner of Azteca Wines and Spirits, says that her supply chain is now frozen. The uncertainty is affecting the girls, the whole production system, everything we have worked for during so many years because of a tariff. U.S. President Donald Trump initially planned to impose a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada. However, he agreed to a 30-day pause after they pledged to reinforce their borders. Made from prickly agave plants and used in cocktails like margaritas, tequila has surged in popularity in the U.S. The country imported $3.8 billion of tequila in the first 9 months of 2024, according to the U.S. Distilled Spirits Council. This represents a 13% increase from the same period a year earlier and is more than the combined imports of whiskey, gin, rum, brandy, and vodka. Like French champagne or Italian Parmesan cheese, products called tequila are mezcal must be made in Mexico. Tariffs would therefore increase prices in the U.S. For Barajas, if tariffs are imposed, U.S. buyers are likely to opt for other drinks. And that's sad. It has caused us great surprise that they want to do this because it has taken us many years to enter the palate of the United States. Russian overnight drone attack on the city of Dolinska in central Ukraine injured the mother and her 2 children and forced the evacuation of people from 38 flats after their apartment building was damaged, a regional official said on Tuesday. A difficult night for the Kirovohrad region. Andriy Rykovich, governor of the Kirovohrad region, said in a post on the Telegram messaging app, an enemy drone hit a high-rise building in Dolinska. The mother and one of the children were hospitalized, Rykovich added. He posted photos of flames bursting out of windows of a high-story apartment building. ATN could not independently verify the reports. There was no immediate comments from Russia. Both Moscow and Kyiv denied targeting civilians in their attacks in the war that Russia started with its full-scale invasion on Ukraine nearly 3 years ago. But thousands of civilians have died in the conflict, the vast majority of them Ukrainian. And U.S. officials are meeting in the Saudi Arabia for talks without the participation of Kyiv or its European allies on how to end the war in Ukraine. Turkish police detained 282 suspected members of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, militant group in raids over the last 5 days, Interior Minister Ali Yerlikaya said on Tuesday. The raids came as Turkey continues to remove elected pro-Kurdish mayors from their posts over militant ties in a crackdown coinciding with hopes for an end to a 40-year conflict between the PKK and authorities. Jailed PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan is to make a statement on such efforts 4 months after an ally of President Tayyip Erdogan urged him to call on the militants to lay down their arms. Police carried out this week's counter-terror raids in 51 provinces, as well as in the capital Ankara and the larger city of Istanbul, the minister said on X. The suspects were accused of conducting PKK propaganda, providing financing for the group, recruiting members, and joining in street protests, he said. The police seized 2 AK-47 rifles among other weapons. On Saturday, Turkey removed terrorism-related appointed officials since 2024 elections. The PKK, designated as a terrorist group by Turkey and its Western allies, launched its insurgency against the state in 1984. More than 40,000 people have been killed in the conflict. 2 British nationals detained in Iran have been charged with espionage after collecting information in different locations in the country, Iranian Judiciary Mizan news agency reported on Tuesday. The British Foreign Office named them on Saturday as Craig and Lindsay Foreman. Britain has a genuine intent to strengthen trade with Saudi Arabia, Investment Minister Poppy Gustafson said on Tuesday at the Capital Markets Forum taking place in Riyadh. Gustafson said in Britain was increasing the number of direct flights to Saudi Arabia, which would make e-visas easier. Everton's new stadium at Bramley Moor Dock welcomed 10,000 fans for a test event featuring an under-18 friendly match against Wigan Athletic as the Premier League club prepared to say goodbye to Goodison Park at the end of this season. Construction of the new 52,880 8-seater arena took 4 years and cost close to £800 million, approximately $1.1 billion, according to British media reports. And it is also set to host matches at Euro 2028. Whoever's designed it has done a fantastic job because the stands are on top of you, Everton under-18 coach Kate Southern told Everton TV. When this is full next season, it's going to be a hell of a place to play. Wigan Harrison Rima became the first to score at the Everton Stadium in the 12th minute. Everton lost 2-1 with Ray Roberts scoring for the host. Goodison Park, Everton's home since 1892, hosted its final debut on Wednesday as David Moyes' side held leaders Liverpool to a 2-2 draw. The stadium's last competitive game will take place on May 18 when Everton hosts Southampton. The stadium will then be demolished with the land set to be redeveloped into a mixed-use scheme with housing and offices. That's the international news for today. I am Francis Neka. Thank you for watching. You can follow us on our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, at Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube at Atlantic Television Network, Instagram at Atlantic TV Network. Watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Remember, peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Coming up next is Business News.